have Ratna. He's the digital transformation expert who has over 25 years of digital transformation experience with 15 years of experience in the field of SAP. He's also the co-founder and director of KTern.AI, a pure-play SAP services company with locations across the world. Currently, he's the chief product officer and director at KTern, where he's leading a young team with a mission to inspire and democratize SAP digital transformations as a service. So Ratna will be sharing his experience on SAP digital transformations, along with the challenges and the solutions in the new normal. So next up, we have Jan Musil. He's a renowned C-level leader at SAP, heading a team of product managers that build and maintain the SAP ACTIVATE methodology for SAP S/4HANA Cloud, SAP S/4HANA, and other SAP products. The SAP ACTIVATE methodology guides SAP customers in deployment of their SAP solutions using the fit-to-standard mindset to drive faster time to value. Jan will be talking a lot more about SAP ACTIVATE and why it is the lifeline of any SAP transformation project. Then we've got Vignesh, the head of product growth at KTern.AI, where he drives the growth operations and corporate development. His thought leadership on SAP-led digital transformations as a service has a global influence with avid followers in the SAP ecosystem. Today, he's going to walk us through the platform that is revolutionizing the SAP world and defining the new normal of SAP digital transformations. On that note, I would like to hand over this session to Ratna. Ratna, over to you.
Thank you, Jacob. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joined this webinar. Really appreciate your time. So we'll try and make it valuable for everyone who's joining this. The whole webinar is all about SAP Activate and how we could drive the SAP projects in a better way and do it the right way in terms of driving your digital transformation. So I will do a introduction for probably 8 to 10 minutes and then hand it over to Jan Musil to talk more about how SAP Activate is one of the key factors in terms of driving any SAP transformation project. However, I want to touch upon the overall digital transformation that's happening throughout the globe in terms of how we move from the older world to the new world, or in our case, it is going to be ECC to S/4HANA, and it is not a one-time event. It's going to be continuous. It is not that you do it once and then it works fine. It has to be continuous. There has to be continuous way of how the business evolves and how our system is able to take care of the evolving business needs. The reason why we have kept a continuous or an infinite loop for KTern. KTern is a platform which advances the SAP Activate, combines that with the scope item in terms of driving SAP project. It also combines data that's present in the existing system and juxtapose that with the tribal intelligence knowledge that we have gathered over a period of time that helps you in terms of driving the SAP projects. So we've got 5 streams in our platform. So I'll talk a bit about our platform and then talk why we are trying to do this and why Activate is important. So the underlying principle of this platform, KTern itself, is there are 5 streams. And if you look at the digital transformation itself, it starts from the planning stage to the business optimization stage. And there are 5 stages that we recommend, starting from a discovery to governing a project and then doing a orchestration using the existing process or the new process, testing the new process that you have put in place, and then during run mode, how do we optimize and have better value driven for the users, for the customers. That's what this platform does in terms of automating, in terms of driving an intelligence enterprise and governing the overall project and automating few things on the way. So that's the overall idea of this platform. It's done by a SAP partner for the complete SAP ecosystem, which includes the customers, the system integrators, and then our own proprietary bots that can help you make it faster and have complete control of how you do the digital transformation. It's completely data driven, meaning The platform relies heavily on the data and the proprietary knowledge base, or if you're a system integrator, you could build your own knowledge base using this platform when you move from one transformation project to another. And it's completely API based, which means it aligns with how SAP works. Typically before, and I've worked with lots of CIOs, and the question that comes first to most of them is, before getting into a transformation journey, the major questions that comes in terms of what will be the board approval, what will be the kind of stakeholders that will get involved, what should be the organization change management that should be planned, because most of them have invested quite a lot in terms of customization, and what should I do with the customization that has been done in the last 10, 15 or 20 years? How do I move to the new world? I've seen CIOs asking for the best practices, but they still want to retain the customization that has been the investment that has gone into customization. So how do we handle that part? How do we handle the existing data, the testing, and who should comprise, and how it will affect the project? What are the different ways that how we could move from ECC to S/4HANA, and how is it going to impact the business? So quite a lot of questions, and I just listed a few. But if you really look at it in terms of how we drive it, there are at least hundreds of questions that comes from different stakeholders, and one of the solution, and SAP has been driving it in a huge way in terms of how SAP Activate. If you are able to follow that as a framework and then drive your transformation, I'm sure we have done it with quite a lot of projects, and it helps in the complete transformation. It helps in the project not slipping. It helps to ensure that everyone is taken care of in a shared way. So there's more accountability, shared responsibility with the system integrator, with the customer in terms of driving the transformation. So these are the different set of questions that comes up at the top of the head for any CIO or the business users in terms of driving the project. And the best part is, if there's a huge investment that goes in terms of driving your transformation, it is important that it is being done in a very guided way, be it the cloud or on-premise, or how you drive it. SAP Activate in the last 6 to 7 years has tremendously come up in terms of how projects can be delivered, and that's what we have integrated, or that's what we have brought it in our platform, where we believe in SAP Activate and the global scope items, and that's how we drive most of the projects using our platform KTern, and it could integrate with any of the third-party applications or the SAP products itself, and that's what you see. So it's all about the people, process, and tools. End of the day, we have to ensure that we have competent people, and then we have a defined set of process which is governed by SAP Activate, and then some kind of a tool. Of course, there are quite a lot of tools, and SAP has done a great bit of work in terms of driving that to the whole SAP ecosystem. But we from our side have also done something on KTern to ensure that you're able to drive your SAP projects in a better and nice way. So I also, maybe I spoke about 40,000 feet height, but just want to tell you the importance of how we are trying to combine SAP Activate and the scope item. And typically, if you look at any projects, SAP Activate remains as one Excel, and the process or the line of business, the process group, the scope item, that hierarchy, the GSI remains in another Excel, and it's never seen together, right? But if you really look at it, SAP Activate, it's a means, or it's not the end itself. It's a means to ensure that you have your process up and running in your SAP system. So it's a one time. It's unique. It's a framework, and it's got all its activity. So there's a lifetime in terms of how SAP Activate is handled, and but process itself is very continuous, right? So that's what we are trying to do with SAP Activate, ensure that both are combined together. So what we have done in our platform, KTern, is we have combined these two. So one is a horizontal. If you take Activate as an horizontal and Process as a vertical, it could be any industry set, or it could be an LOB, it could be finance or supply chain based, could be anything. But we have tried to combine that and ensure that we are able to deliver a project in a better way. So if you look at the different phases that SAP recommends and how it's going to be different, is I've taken an example of BDH, which is one of the scope item, and how it flows across the different phases. So if you have to have the sale order entry with one-time customer up and running, which is a process, which is a continuous process, which a sales clerk does, and how do we ensure that it is up and running across these phases? And that's what SAP Activate does. And we have combined that in our platform to make it easy, where you can create and clone, click and drag and drop, and then create these processes so that people are able to work it and make it up and running. So if you really look at the life cycle of the process itself before it gets into the run mode, it goes through the different phases of discover, prepare, explore, realize, and deploy, and then the continuous run mode. And then you have, on top of it, the requirements that you do in terms of backlog, in terms of the STD document that you have to create. And then if at all it's not standard, and if you want to customize, then you do a build and test, which is an agile way of driving it, and then deploy it, do some UAT, and then hand it over to the SME, which runs into the business ops. Now, this is a PPT, but this is something that we have as part of our platform so that users will be able to drive it in a better way. Of course, this whole session is about the SAP Activate and how we have automated that in KTern with configurable dashboards, with the drag and drop, clone and create, to make the SAP ecosystem easier for them to drive any digital transformation, on how you can track it, how you can track the risk, how you can have a workspace for the different stakeholders or the different people who are involved in a digital transformation, do auto documentation, and do the whole thing in a better way, in an easier way, so that you save time and you save cost. So with that, let me hand it over to Jan Musil, it was good of him to get into this webinar along with us. And he's the founder of SAP Activate, and who better than me to talk about SAP Activate. Over to you, Jan Musil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ratna, and thank you all for inviting me to your webinar to talk about SAP Activate. My name is Jan Musil. I'm leading the SAP Activate team inside SAP as a chief product owner, and I'll talk a little bit about what Activate is. I think the poll showed us pretty well that there's about half of the audience that have used Activate or is using Activate right now, and about a half of people that are using it sometime or not aware of it. So let me start with explaining what Activate is. So we have created Activate in 2014 and introduced it to the market in 2015 when SAP launched S/4HANA at Sapphire in Orlando. And really the idea behind it is that we need to combine the guidance, the methodology, make it prescriptive, very detailed, so we serve all various types of users that are involved in transformations, and then enrich it with the ready-to-run business processes that come in form of best practices. They come in form of enterprise management layer for SAP S/4HANA. And we also have partners, ecosystem partners, that are bringing in their own pre-configuration and ready-to-run processes. That's the foundation for what we then call fit to standard, and I'll talk a little bit about it later in my segment. And it all is empowered by the tools that are used during that implementation project, where those are the tools for gathering the requirements, capturing them, documenting them, tracing them throughout the sprints and iterations until the successful go live, or tools that are used for data migration, getting the data ready for upload into the target system. And there's a wide range of tools that Activate leverages and guides you how to use them. Now, we have done all this to really achieve a couple of objectives. Number one is to increase speed of innovation, help our customers innovate faster, absorb that innovation at a faster pace. And in order to enable that, we also have a set of guidance principles embedded into Activate that will enable your organization to implement in a modern way and enable you to absorb that innovation faster. So in public cloud, we are seeing our customers receiving innovation in continuous feature delivery mode. In the private cloud, that innovation cycle is now annual with the major releases, and you can consume additional capabilities as SAP delivers them. That is ultimately driving greater productivity for your business. And we have designed Activate to be scalable, so we can support customers of various sizes, complexities, regional, geographical footprint, localization needs, and Activate really can scale up and down. We have customers that are startups that use Activate for implementation of fairly small SAP footprint up to say 30, 40 users. And we have major global organizations that have used Activate to deploy globally across their entire business. And that's really why we developed Activate and introduced it. And it is not that it has not been touched since 2015. We're actually updating Activate regularly. So our cloud assets are updated every 2 weeks. So there's continuous innovation that goes into Activate. We not only promote the use of Agile, we also live it. So that's really important. Now, let me talk a little bit about how Activate is different from ASAP, because I get that question a lot. A lot of our consultants that have been in the ecosystem for a while, they are familiar with ASAP, those CDs, or later ASAP in Solution Manager. What we did with Activate is that we have expanded the guidance for all users, not only for project managers or team leads. We really looked at what is the need of a business consultant, functional consultant, architect, technology consultant, business users, OCM leads, and all that content has been enriched in Activate. So we're able to support not only the project manager with kind of guidance and structuring the project, but also give very tangible guidance to a business process owner on how to approach fit to standard, what is their role in fit to standard, and what is the outcome of fit to standard, and how it's driven throughout the rest of the implementation. So here are some of the questions that are on top of people's mind when they start their transformation, and Activate is addressing not only these questions but a lot more. Now, we have seen Ratna walk through the phases of Activate, and you can see them in this detailed slide that provides the high-level view of the key activities that happen across these phases. So if you look at the 6 phases of Activate, we start with Discover. In Discover, the objective is really to support the selection of the solution, initial scoping, initial architecture work, and transformation roadmap. As we move through the contract start, which is really a subscription contract or a contract to deliver a project, we have the 4 core phases of Activate that start with the prepare phase, in which we are planning, setting the governance, detailing the scope, and setting the project standards. We also install the tools and enable the project team so they can execute through the fit to standard in Explore phase. In Explore phase, as I alluded to it, we are running a set of fit to standard analysis workshops. During those workshops, the customer will see a ready-to-run business processes in a system live, and have a conversation whether that best practice that's being delivered is a fit for the business or if it needs to be tailored. And that drives the requirements, that drives the backlog. The other thing that will happen in explore phase is that there are going to be discussions not only around business process requirements, but also connected data requirements, any extensibility that needs to be done, integrations that need to be realized during the implementation, and that drives the complete backlog. I'm missing a few things in that description because you also need user access, security, all those other things. So that all is considered in the explore phase. Then in realize, the team really transitions into iterative agile mode of consuming the backlog and realizing the capabilities in incremental way through Activate sprints. In our public cloud projects, we are seeing sprints of duration of between 1 to 2 weeks. In on-premise, we are seeing the duration up to 4 weeks. If you go past 4 weeks, it's really hard to call it a sprint. So if you're sprinting, try to limit your sprints to 4 weeks. And the goal of each sprint is to realize, it's to deliver the functionality to your at least quality system or test system, so you are ready to deploy it into production in deploy. That brings me to deploy. The singular focus in deploy is to get ready for go live, prep, simulate, make sure that everything will go smoothly on that cutover date, and drive towards that successful go live. Then we transition into the run phase where we have stabilization of the system, and then ongoing improvements, installing upgrades, patches, and so on and so forth. So that's really the scope of what Activate covers. But when it comes to the actual project, the core 4 phases are the phases in between those 2 milestones that you see on this slide. Now, as I mentioned, Activate has been around for a while now, and we have learned a lot during those 7 years. It's over 7 years now since Activate has been around. So some of the principles are embedded in this slide. You can see that we're really emphasizing the agile and fit to standard mindset, meaning embrace the standard where it brings you value, and it's probably in 80%, if not more, of your processes, because they're not differentiating. If you're trying to differentiate in those or tailor these non-differentiating processes, you're not really gaining a lot of value for your business. Focus your investment in tailoring your own practices where you differentiate from your competition, areas where you can innovate, and that really is impactful. So, if somebody tells you that Activate is going to box you into best practices, that's not true. The mindset is, let's start with standard. Let's start with the assumption that standard will fit. And if it doesn't, let's define how we adjust that standard. And that's really the importance of that mindset. The third point is really critical. I don't think that's new for Activate. That's basically any transformation project. As you're going through the transformation, start your data analysis, data cleansing, and migration activities early. These are on critical path, and they will slow down your project or delay go live if you miss any of these activities. They are basically your critical path item. Often organizations underestimate the organizational change management. Organizational change management is becoming even more important in this fast-paced world when we are implementing. Some of our implementations with Activate are as short as 4 weeks. I know it's unbelievable, but we have projects that went live in a month. More likely, you're going to see some implementations around 3, 6, 9 months, depending on the scope, geographical footprint, and the number of users. But in any case, all those implementations are introducing a new set of processes, new sets of practices, new system, new tools, and you need to give your users chance to absorb it all and drive the organizational change management proactively. We are suggesting that you take advantage of the application lifecycle management tools like Cloud ALM for cloud-first customers, or Solution Manager for our customers that are running hybrid landscapes or predominantly on-premise landscapes. And of course, the last 3 items are, again, things that are important. Try to find resources that know S4. ECC resources may not know all the changes that came in S4, so they may be learning on your project. Prefer to get someone that knows S4 in that particular area and has done a few projects. Integrated holistic planning, including test automation. As you go through these implementations, depending on what you're implementing, if we talk about public cloud, there are certain events that you cannot delay. There'll be upgrades that will come at predetermined times. There are downtimes that you may need to consider if you're doing your on-premise or private cloud implementation, and you need to apply some patches, hot fixes, and so on. So holistic planning is really critical in all those projects. And then strategically being aligned with SAP, being aligned with your SI is really critical for your success. So with that, I'll leave you with a few tools that we have available for everybody, and I'll post those links into the chat so you can bookmark them even before you get the webinar information. So first one is the SAP Activate community. It resides on sap.com. It's about a year old in this platform. We have used another platform previously, but we have opened up Activate community, so that's available to everybody. As well as a roadmap viewer where you will find the methodology content, the guidance, the accelerators, templates, all of that content can be found in roadmap viewer. And last but not least is the best practices explorer. That's where you will find all the ready to run business processes, business process models, the documentation of how these processes are set up and how they'll run in your system, and all those details. And last thing before I hand over to Vignesh, there's a new book that we have published with SAP Press just a few months ago. It's a second edition of SAP Activate book. If you're interested, it's available on the SAP Press website. You can also get it on Amazon if you're in favor of that company. But the ebook, if you're interested in ebook, that's available from the SAP Press website. So with this, I'll hand it over to Vignesh, who's going to take you through the tool itself. Thank you very much, and I'll stay on for any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Arne. Thank you so much. I will take over the controls so that I can get started with the workspace and the demo application. Yeah, so I hope my screen is visible and I am loud and clear. Perfect, thank you. That was a splendid talk about the importance of Activate and how it acts as a baseline. Now, when Ratna spoke about the challenges when it comes to S/4HANA transformations or SAP transformations in general, he also spoke about the platform KTern. So the platform which I'm about to show in another 30 seconds is something which is on the SAP store, and it is widely used by many partners and customers in terms of their digital transformation journey and the benefits they are able to see. So the fundamental automation or intelligence which on top of which we built the platform is SAP Activate, and which is exactly why we took a chance to invite An in terms of emphasizing on how important SAP Activate is for customers as well as for system integrators. Now, with that note, I will head to my application where we can talk about the application in action. Now, you can create your own workspaces, and I am part of the application in my browser, and you can go into demo.KTern.com and you will be able to explore what I'm about to show right now. But typically, what we have done is that we have tried to assetize or create a knowledge base around these S/4HANA transformations. So you can be a system integrator, you can be a customer, or you can be somebody who wants to learn SAP Activate. You can just get started with the platform and you can manage as many projects as you want as a workspace, a digital workspace created for you. And this is the new normal with remote work being the emphasis. Like I mentioned, you can create or spin up a workspace dedicated for your particular use case. It could be a greenfield implementation, a brownfield conversion, an upgrade, or a move to S/4HANA Cloud, or you could belong to any particular industry vertical, and you might want to start with the best practices and use the best asset and the SAP recommended assets available out there for you to get started with your journey. So it could be Ariba, or it could be any cloud product that you might want to get started. And all that is available for your picking. And all I have to do is click on a particular template, and I could preload a set of activities in terms of SAP Activate. So I just say, create my model data. And like how An mentioned, that an Activate is not just a plan that is for a PMO office or a project manager. It involves the business users, it involves the right stakeholders. You talk about testing, you talk about data, you talk about integrations, and you talk about organization change managers. So you involve everybody as part of SAP Activate, and that's exactly how you can run an SAP project to success. So the platform recommends the SAP Activate framework, and it also suggests the roles on who has to drive it, the process expert, the configuration expert, you have the extensibility expert, you have the leads involved here, you got some change managers involved here. So everybody involved to make a project successful is something the platform recommends. And with that, you can also preload the best practice content for your industry vertical. And that goes by a hierarchy of line of business, process group, scope item, and scope item variant. So we had this erstwhile business process master list, and right now it is called the scope items. And the platform recommends for the template you chose, and it also suggests the list of standard scope items available for you, thus emphasizing on the fit to standard mindset. So you get to get all these scope items loaded up as part of your workspace when you create them. And of course, testing. So An mentioned again about test automation and test management. That is important as well. So for the scope items which you are trying to load into your workspace, the platform recommends you the standard set of test cases which are available for each of those scope items. So you're not just starting with a blank slate, but you've got an Activate roadmap template, which is for your use case. You've got the best practices content that is applicable to your industry, and also the standard test cases that you might want to reuse and put to good use throughout this entire Activate framework, so that you are able to achieve the assurance part of it. Now, with that note, I would want to show you the workspace which I have created based on what I just did. So you can launch a workspace. This is my workspace which I created, and you can invite all of your business users, organization change managers, system integrators, and for SAP partners who deliver SAP projects, you could invite your customers, you could invite your entire delivery team into this workspace, and each of them will have their own dedicated workspace that gives them an up-to-date information about what they have to do in terms of this particular project, about how many tasks they have, how many issues or backlogs are assigned to them, how many test cases are they dealing with, etc. So the first thing start with the Activate, obviously. So I've got the menu here, and I can go choose the phase cockpit. So based on the Activate template, which I downloaded or which I used in order to create this workspace, I'll be able to see a face cockpit, as you can see here right now. And if we have to understand the structure of Activate, it starts with the face. You have discover, prepare, explore, realize, deploy, run. And Arn mentioned about the phase between the contract start and the go live. Those would be the prepare, explore, realize, deploy. And these phases are the topmost level, followed by something called as the deliverables. So for each of these phases, you will have multiple deliverables for which there be tasks and subtasks. Now, these are SAP standard recommended best practices when it comes to executing a transformation project. So from a phase, and within each of these phases, you will have multiple deliverables that you might want to follow for a sustainable, successful transformation. And for each of those deliverables, there will be sets of activities which you would involve your project team for. It could be your functional consultants or process experts. It could be a technical consultant, your testing team, your data management team, your integration team, and your change management team, and sometimes people from the business as well. So you have a plan and you have different work streams who will have to work in tandem in order to work this out. You could invite all of them together in this one single workspace, and it could range from different roles, like we mentioned. That's what Activate recommends, and they could all work together with this project plan or the transformation methodology which we imported. You could get started with your transformation. Now, how it looks like is something like this. So your entire Activate framework turns into an execution plan with deliverables, with work items, and you could define user story points or weightages to it so that you're able to track your baseline planned completion versus your actual. And you could create and drag and drop and define your project plan with your due dates and, of course, with ownerships, so that you're able to maintain and see how exactly are you performing in terms of sticking to those deliverables and completing them on time, and who the resources are when it comes to execution of this. The platform also translates this into a critical path simulator, and it will highlight you upon the critical path items when it comes to your transformation plan. Like I mentioned, you might want to be focused more towards your testing, your data management, and your cleansing activities, because they directly fall into your critical path. So the plan which you imported also becomes a simulator, as you could see on the screen, across different phases, which you could define. And the platform also tells you about your resource availability matrix, not just for the project team, but also the involvement from the business. So you could plan it ahead, because S4 transformations are no longer IT-led, they are business-led. So that's what happens, where you just took a plan, embedded it into your workspace, invited people, and you've got due dates assigned. And you could also assign different milestones and have them as part of your project execution. So you can maintain your billable milestones as non-billable milestones, and that a system integrator might benefit with. Now that's the baseline. That sets up the baseline for the platform to execute things. There's also the digital process, which would be the result of you importing the best practice content. So the best practice content which you import at the start of creating this workspace appears as part of digital process cockpit. So you've got your line of business, process group, scope item variant, and finally the process step, the L1 to L5 and even L6 in terms of maintenance of your process scope. You could maintain them, you could assign process owners to it, you could involve the business users as well. And throughout the phases of SAP Activate, these scope items get enriched with information. It could be a fit to gap analysis or fit to standard adaptation, or sometimes you might want to run an MSCW workshop in terms of identifying the gaps so that you could work on your backlogs or your user stories. So that's exactly what happens when it comes to this process cockpit. So now you've got your activate plan, which is the best practice of executing things. And you've got the process cockpit, which is more your catalog of your process scope. Now, with both of these together in one single place, the platform tries to set up the governance stuff. Like, this is something which a PMO office would love immediately, because you got to talk about the governance, you've got to talk about the PMO, you've got to talk about the project leads. So this PMO center or the control center is something that will automate that, so you can maintain your scope, your tangible benefits, and you could define your communication management. So all of your Scrum calls or cadence calls gets automated by doing this. So you could maintain the reporting and the cadence mechanisms for this entire project, and you could all maintain in one single space. And then the escalation matrix. I mean, we might want to stick to our deadlines and time, and it is all about on time and on cost execution. So you could pick a particular executable activity and attach an escalation matrix to it. So every time there is a delay in completion of that activity, there'll be escalations happening on day 1, day 2, day 3, and with the people who you recommend to do it. So you could define your escalation matrix, and it could go up until multiple levels. So you're keeping this entire project team informed about frequent delays or escalations when it happens. And then the risk registers. So Activate comes up with rich accelerators and templates that you could use. The platform tries to use that, and it converts them into an executable stuff. Like you could see here, you could maintain your own risk register as part of this platform, and you can define risks across the standard categories. And the platform also recommends and highlights upon certain risks as and when they are identified with an impact level and probability of occurrence, so that the project team is able to take right decisions at right points during this entire project execution. Now, that's all about governance and setting up the cadence and the good stuff. The best part starts to happen when you get into something called the workflows and the signups. So the best part about having the business users involved into your transformation workspace is to make sure they are aligned and they have they're okay with any kind of design changes or process changes which might happen as a result of fit to standard move, or it could be because of a gap analysis and an introduction of a customization following the best practices. When that happens, it usually causes friction within the business users, because in the end, they are the ones who are going to use it. And you might want to alleviate all those frictions and the red flags at the time of go live by making sure they are involved throughout those critical business decisions and project decisions. So what the platform does is that you could create your own workflows and approvals that you could maintain across different items. And you could define these items in here. And these items mean, so they can be approvals in terms of completion of certain workshops, and you involve the right stakeholders in terms of approving them. So it starts with maybe in this case myself, and when I submit it, it goes into the SAP architect who proofreads it, and then it finally goes into the finance head, who could be the business head, who finally approves. Yes, this is good to go. And why? You are imbibing the organization change management and adherence and a sort of agreement with the business by doing so. And all of these gets assetized, and you get to maintain them in your own sign-off cockpit, as you could see here. And that's one part. The other part would be more towards your cutover. Now, for a cutover to happen or for a go live to happen, there are numerous activities that happens across different phases. So the platform allows you to create your own cutover hierarchy. And yeah, it starts with implementation, and it goes across different phases. So it starts with your discover phase, and you have certain deliverables that you might want to submit when it comes to adhering to the best practices. And with different owners getting involved. For prepare, there are data migration activities. For explore, you will have fit gap workshops and validation of them, finalization of the backlogs, and the MSCW priority happens here. Here's where the agile mode kicks in, where there are sprint activities in terms of releasing certain features or backlogs into your quality and your development systems. And you get into the realized phase. Here's more towards testing, configurations, solution walkthroughs, and finally testing, where you might want to get the approval from the business in terms of making sure this is good. Business critical applications are running fine. There are no red flags. And when it comes to the go live or when it comes to the go no go decisions, everybody on the business side is aligned when it comes to this particular project go live. So you could maintain it all. And what it provides is that it gives you an eagle-eye view of what is exactly happening and where exactly is my project progressing towards, and where are the hiccups, where are the rejection zones, which line of business is kind of not really good in terms of acceptance from business, and where exactly are the delays. So the delays and the reporting is this whole other thing, which I will cover very soon. But what this provides is a complete control and governance for somebody as a project lead to maintain and manage their entire transformation involving the business, enforcing them in terms of approvals, so that the move is a breeze and it is smooth as well in terms of acceptance and change management from the business users. So that's really what these signups cover about. But one thing I mentioned, or even Ratna spoke about, is more towards the clonal period, where you have your activate on one end, and you also have your global scope items on the other end. How do you merge them together? And that is something which I am really looking forward to cover. But before that, there are these calendar events and which blocks your Outlook calendar so that you could maintain it all in one single place and there is no duplication of activities. And all of your test cases also gets loaded as and when you load up your workspace. Now, let me cover the one which I really wanted to talk about, the clonal create. There's this backlog which you can maintain. These are more in terms of your user stories. So once you're done with your Fit2Gap workshops, you'll be coming up with list of requirements from the business, and they might be, you will map them to a solution. It could be a form, it could be an enhancement, and it could be a workflow. So you could maintain all of them within this workspace and assign tasks and run them towards a sprint. Now here's where things get interesting. On the left, you've got something called your tasks, which you have to execute for different people. And as you could see here, you've got different activities and deliverables that you might want to follow. Now let's take fit to standard preparation, for example, and I'll take create initial integration and interface list. This could be just one single activity as a best practice, but you might want to make sure the entire business scope or process scope is covered in terms of executing this. So I would want to do a clone and create for this. And then I go to a link item B and I choose my process groups. So what I'm trying to do is that I want to make sure I do an integration workshop across my entire process items. So I can include all of these, and this will immediately create me the process groups here. And then I could be doing a set of workshop. I could be creating a test case. I could be creating a task. I could create a sign off, or it could be anything. So I just say a default template, and this is something that will load me an set of activities which I might have to perform for all of the process scope. So it was just one single task, but immediately it blew up into multiple sub activities that you might want to split across different line of business and different functional owners who could work on it as an activity, and who could be coming up with a list of integration. And you got this integration master list that you maintain as part of the best practices as an accelerator, and that comes into picture. And you may want to have workshops and meetings and do sign-offs, and you could import them immediately into your project plan. And so if you could imagine doing this for every such activity, you could be dealing with humongous volumes of activities that you might want to perform across different process owners, and that's where the platform comes into picture and adds value here. Now, I would want to show you how it looks like in reality in terms of the set of activities that had happened for a process. By doing this, And by following SAP Activate to the core, you will be doing activities for one single line of business, for example, manufacturing. So these are the set of activities that have happened so far within this workspace for manufacturing alone. There's a DMS workshop, you've got integration, you've got master data requirement workshops, you've got analytic requirement workshop, you've got embedded analytics workshops, and then there's sign-offs happening. There are designing on in-app extensibility, and you've got authorization roles and assignment activities. You've got the migration object identifications and templates for data loading. Aren't mentioned about it. Data loading and data movement is going to be very critical. And you've got the analytics framework also getting covered over here, and master data configurations and predefined issues which might appear. And you might want to do process configurations. You might want to do setting up of printers or external interfaces that comes with it, and form templates, email templates for this one single line of business done by a principal consultant or a functional consultant dealing with manufacturing. And you could imagine this happening across different lines of business and modules that you might want to do. And I've got just 2 more minutes, so I might probably want to cover the portfolio and the reporting that comes with this. By doing so, what really happens is you could imagine and maintain insights, drag and drops across different phases and across different subgroups. And these might just prove beneficial for somebody who is managing an S4HANA transformation project. So there are almost like 2,000 odd work items or executable activities within this workspace. And that goes across different phases. And you've got different deliverables under each phase, how many deliverables totally by different phases, and who are the consultants who are working, what their statuses are, and what are the overdue activities, how is the weekly calendar or monthly calendar in terms of heat maps, and what are the monthly deliverables planned month on month, your monthly burned on activities, because you're going to be dealing with sprint activities as well. And you could just change the illustrations or create your own illustration which you might want and maintain them and have it in your workspace. So that's where the platform comes into picture. So it takes Activate, it takes the best practice content, it empowers them with automation and data intelligence. And not just that, it connects to an SAP system and tells you how exactly your process is running, who the end users are, and what the top business processes are, and by the configurations or by the customizing data, what are the different legal entities or organizational entities that were configured in this current system. And this could also include your portfolio, where you could maintain different dashboarding, and that might mean across different projects, you might want to get reports and alerts in terms of on-time and on-cost closures. So you've got the summary that talks about if whether you are ahead or you are behind, your cost estimates and your effort estimates and your against your baseline. So that kind of tells you if whether you're doing good in terms of your project or not. So with that note, I would want to swap back into my presentation and talk about the goodies which we have got for people. And this is something which I want to show as well. These are from the partners who use SAP Activate and KTern.AI to the core and what they were able to provide as results.
Yeah, we've got a question. Let me read that out to you speakers. So the first question, Surya is asking, what are the ways to get the logics for preparing the functional specifications?
So I can take a stab at it. While Vignesh was talking, I went through the SAP Activate and found a specific task that enables the project team on prepping for Fit to Standard. There is a detailed guide that enables you to structure the Fit to Standard workshops, which templates are used. We have some tools that we have introduced recently for this world of doing everything remotely or in hybrid. So there's a mural template that you can use to capture requirements in Fit to Standard workshop. And then, of course, you want to capture the results of those workshops in your backlog. So, we have seen a version of backlog that KTern offers. And then, if you're using Activate without any other tools, there's a template in Excel. And then if you're using Solution Manager or Cloud ALM, these tools have appropriate places to capture requirements. So I'll post a link to that task in Activate into the chat. And you can let us know through the chat if this answered your question.
I hope that answered your question, Surya. So next up, we have Robert asking if SAP Activate covers only S/4HANA Cloud or any other products.
So I'm gonna continue taking a stab at this. So Activate covers S4 fully. So S4 on-prem, S4 private cloud, S4 public cloud. It also covers currently the Ariba solutions, Fieldglass, Concur, Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud. And then we have a set of general roadmaps that you can use for any cloud or on-premise solution that will give you the framework to follow. That is used for any other solution where we didn't quite get the coverage in Activate. So that all is available in the Roadmap Viewer. If you scroll up in the chat, there are links. The second link that I posted after my section is going into the Roadmap Viewer.
Got it. And we have a question from Sam asking if there is a limit on the number of stakeholders that can be involved in a workspace in KTern.
It is actually known. You can have unlimited number of users as part of this workspace. So you could invite people from business, system integrators, and there's no limit in terms of number of stakeholders you would want to have. Yeah.
All right. And we have a question from Natraj asking how about estimations? Do you have any tools which are integrated for better estimations?
Okay, I've got an answer to that. But Ann, would you wanna do you have any thoughts on this before I could take up the answer a question, Ann?
So estimation is one of those things that is very sensitive and depends on your experience. If you have resources with a high level of expertise and experience in running projects, they will be more efficient in getting tasks done than somebody that's new to the task. But generally, when it comes to estimation, you're doing estimations in multiple levels. So you will be doing estimations in the beginning of the project on fairly high level. And then as you go through your implementation process, in each sprint, you will be estimating the effort and durations of completing each backlog item. And then, it is important to set the right framework for these estimations, because experts sometimes focus on estimating the tasks to develop something or to configure something and may miss the effort that's needed for testing, integration, documentation. So you want to be very clear on what we call definition of done in Activate and in Agile. And that really drives the estimation. So if your definition of done is we're configured, that estimate will be different from definition of done that is I am configured, I have unit tested the functionality, I have documented and I have resolved all the outstanding technical debt. And if I have that as a recommendation for definition of done, that's gonna drive the estimates.
Yeah, well said. You pretty much covered. That's basically the agile way of doing things in terms of sprint planning and backlog sessions where they do this user story estimate and velocity points, and they add it to this user stories. And the definition of done is very critical so that it kind of falls in line with the alignment. And there's also one major area of intelligence which we are working upon. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to estimate based on the historic data that we have collected so far in terms of executing transformation projects. It's more indicative. I wouldn't call it it is going to be 100% thing, but there are different other parameters that comes into the picture in terms of complexity, in terms of the landscape structure, in terms of the architecture, in terms of number of people involved, on-site, offshore, remote, hybrid. These are different, many of the parameters that plays in a role. And we're trying to rely on data in terms of arriving at better estimations for a given industry vertical, moving from one source to target and looking at these many resources. What would be the estimate is something that we're trying to work upon. And that is something we're trying to build as part of the platform.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And kind of elaborating a little bit on estimation. And this is showing you how difficult this field is, right? Because there are different bases for estimation. So typically, in the beginning of your project, you will be, or before you start your project, let's say in discover phase, you'll be doing estimates on higher levels. So you'll be estimating the number of resources that you need and duration of phases based on kind of a gut feel and previous experience. When it comes to actual execution, you're like traditionally in the past, we would have like a project plan down to each task scheduled, and it was very difficult to manage. In Activate, you're progressively scheduling, and you're fitting into your frame of the phases, but you want to schedule individual activities as you go into that phase. And then as you are going into realize, you're not going to be scheduling, your 10 sprints ahead or 5 sprints ahead. You'll have the upcoming sprints and you will start consuming the backlogs. So it's slightly different than the traditional old way of estimating that we did in the past with ASAP and blueprint and detailed plans. It's a little more progressive nature of that scheduling, planning, and estimation.
Thank you. I think you pretty much went into the crux of it, but it is a topic by itself where we could talk for another 1 hour in terms of estimating and working out on the effort. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe the last couple of questions, since we're already past the time. We've got a question asking, at what stage of a transformation can KTern be adopted?
You don't really need, you could start anywhere because the entry and the exit is quite simple. So if you're somebody who is planning to move to S/4HANA or transform, you could do the analysis in terms of understanding and planning out and preparing a pre-discovery session in terms of what you have in the current landscape, or you could start while you're undergoing a transformation and onboard your users. And this is just like an easy entry and exit where we have just WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook where you can just hop into and just get going with it. That's exactly how the platform works. So there isn't much friction when it comes to getting into the platform at any stage of the phase or a transformation project.
Thank you, Vignesh. And maybe the last question. We've got a question maybe to Jan again. How often do you update SAP Activate content, and how can the users get to know about it?
So that's a great question. I mentioned that in my section that we are updating the SAP Activate content for S/4HANA Cloud every 2 weeks. So if you're implementing public or private cloud S4, keep up to date on release notes that are published in the community. You can find them on top page of the roadmap in Roadmap Viewer. There's a little box to the right where you have key links, and they lead to release notes. And with updates, we are refreshing those release notes and updating what got updated in that past 2 weeks. Don't worry, we don't change everything every 2 weeks. Nobody can do that. But we're focusing on improvements, driving the learnings into Activate, and doing these minor improvements every 2 weeks is driving huge progress over the duration of 12 months. That's a huge difference from what we did previously. Now, all the other roadmaps, our on-premise asset gets updated every about quarter, 3 to 4 times a year, and it's similar for the other solutions.